do you know if you're dating the right person for you? Or if you're in a relationship, how do you know if you're with the right person? In today's podcast, we're going to explore those questions, so stay tuned. And if you want to find out more about how you can find and how you can create the relationship that you want, please head over to therelationshipmaze.com, where we have lots of free resources and our online course, The Relationship Maze. And we have more show notes on therelationshipmazepodcast.com. And make sure you subscribe right now so that you can tune into every episode. Welcome to today's podcast, and today we're going to be exploring the theme of how do you know if you're dating the right person, or how do you know if you're with the right person?
It's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's the big question that I often get asked working with clients who are dating, who are looking for a partner. And it's not there are no easy, straightforward answers, but there are some answers, aren't there, in terms of what really matters here, what you need to look out for when you're dating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the dangers as well, which I experienced in my early 20s was, it's that thought that there's a soulmate out there. And I mean, I remember buying a book, I think I've still got it somewhere on the shelf, which was How to Find Your Soulmate. Yeah. And I was looking for this soulmate, like there was someone who was born to be met, or, we were born to meet each other.
Yeah, because that could be a needle in a haystack, right? You could spend your whole life looking for a soulmate. And indeed, some people do exactly that. There's always this expectation that there's the one right match for you, the one, yeah? It's just the expression says it all. When in fact, actually, there's more than one. There's loads of people who potentially could be the right partner for you. It's more a question of are they the right match for you in terms of are they the kind of people who give you what you need? Do they offer you the kind of love and care that you want? These are the sort of criteria which are way more important. And also the question for me is always what actually constitutes the one?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think actually one thing that I've learned more than anything is it's not that I don't believe necessarily fully that there can be a soulmate, but I think it's more that you can become each other's soulmate. Yeah. So it's not that, like you said, it's not that there's one, but it's about how you grow and develop into becoming a soulmate for one another.
Yeah, and that's a really important point here, isn't it? There isn't a sort of ready-made person out there for you, and what really is worth emphasizing is exactly that point about growth and development, isn't it? That you can come to become each other's, you can grow to become each other's soulmates, so to speak, close to each other, develop that very close bond and that spiritual bond as well. So this is something that can develop over a course of time. Because when you really start to love the other person, when you're out of this kind of crazy hormone-induced madness that you're in the first stages of the relationship, when you actually can't think clearly. So this is a slow process, isn't it? It's a slow burner. It's something that develops.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges as well is like, in those early stages when you date somebody, and I've seen this with a lot of people where, they're looking for that huge spark right at the beginning, just in the first sort of 10 minutes that they meet somebody. And sometimes people kind of like somebody, but they think unless there's that huge kind of rush, like lightning's going to strike you as soon as you meet them, then that it's not worth going on another date. And I think I think it's a danger. It's like, how do you know when it's time to kind of think this isn't the right person, or or do you give that person a chance?
Yeah, this is really good. This is a really interesting question, I think. Do you have to have this kind of spark? I suppose you have to have some sort of attraction, right? There's got to be something about this person that makes you curious about them, or interested, or even physiologically, just physically attracted to that person. But that's not all, isn't it? That can be misleading. I think this is the difficulty, isn't it? That if you only go for that, if you overlook all the other qualities of the other person, you are running the risk of overlooking qualities that this person might have that don't actually suit you well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, like you said, there has to be something in terms of you have to find, there has to be something you like about this person, something you find reasonably attractive. I mean, if you find them unattractive, I think that's going to be a really challenging place to start from. I mean, I don't know. I think it's possible that could, for some people, even be worked through. But the question is, would it be worth the time, or would it work? And I think, there are people, when we go out and meet people, like if you're dating people, there are bound to be quite a few people you don't find attractive, particularly on the online dating scene, because these are people you don't just meet in everyday life. I mean, it's like, before online dating, you'd meet people maybe kind of at work, maybe socially, and there'd be certain people you think, yeah, I find them attractive. But online, it's like you're suddenly thrown together, and you don't know if you're going to find them attractive till you meet them. So you probably have to meet more people initially to see if there are some people that you do find attractive.
Yeah, and I think the difficulty also with online is actually that most people really choose a photo, don't they? I mean, they look at a photo, they don't really look at the profile in lots of detail, I think. They just look at the photo and think, oh, actually, this person looks attractive and this person doesn't look attractive, and that's it. That's the first criterion. And I think this is where you already might fall down to some extent and might get a little bit misguided and actually miss out on some great opportunities in terms of, someone who might offer a little bit more than just a pleasant face to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and again, some people don't realise the importance of good photos. So it's like, you may just not have a good photo, and it's like, actually in real life, this person may look better than some of the people who you think look great in the photo. So it's a real challenge. And I mean, the problem is as well is, it's initially finding a few people that you do find attractive, and often it's talked about that it's good to kind of filter through the people, and maybe kind of, you can meet more people initially just to see if there is some sort of attraction, but then kind of focus on just about sort of 5, 6 or 7 people and get to know them a little bit to kind of find out, is there something that could be more than that?
Yeah.
And focusing on one person too soon can be dangerous, because again, it's like suddenly when we meet, if it's that first person, and say there were maybe 5 or 6 people you're interested in, but we only kind of think, I'm just going to focus on this one person. We then start to project onto them what we think we like, and actually, it's fine. Go on a few dates with 5 or 6 people. Just go on a few dates. Start to kind of get to know them a little bit in terms of what their values are, what kind of they're really interested in, what they might be like to be in a relationship with, rather than kind of put all your eggs in one basket too soon.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And then also really paying very close attention to the qualities of this person. How do they actually make me feel? How do you feel after a date? Do you feel elated? Do you have a sort of a sense of sort of like a warm fuzziness? I mean, how does this person actually impact you? Or do you feel always a little bit on edge when you're with this person? You might find them sexually very attractive, but they might leave you a little bit edgy or a little bit uncertain. You might feel that they impact on your confidence a little bit. So if that happens, that's already a sign where I think, well, hang on, is this a good start? Is this someone who's making, who you feel you can feel safe with or comfortable with, if this is already playing out in the early stages of the relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's important as well is to separate that feeling from, if you always have an uneasy feeling at the end of dates, thinking, well, is this something about me where it's my insecurity, or is it something to do with that time I spend with the other person? And also, sometimes we feel really good after a date, and it's like we have this almost need to see that person again, and it's also, that can be a warning sign in itself as well, because it's sometimes narcissists early on go out their way to kind of love bomb the other person with kind of like compliments and say how wonderful they are, and again, this is something to be aware of, is like, does it seem to be a little bit too excessive in terms of that other person trying to make you feel good? Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's some warning. Effectively, I mean, ultimately, you don't really know until, whether this is a really good potential partner for you, until you really get to know them in a bit more detail. That's the sort of bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get a sense, right? You get a sense of someone, and there might be some warning signs to look out for, but really you've got to give it a bit of time to get to know the other person, get some sense of who have I really got in front of me. Because the other thing, of course, and we've talked about it in another podcast, the other thing that gets in the way is your wish fulfillment, your desires, your projections. So if you really want to have a partner, you will do everything to kind of to look at the other person in the best possible way, to kind of wish them to be the partner that you want them to be, and that sometimes kind of clouds your judgment a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like attraction strikes like lightning, whereas love develops, and it's always remembering too soon. It's like, you know, what we think might be love in the first few dates for some people, maybe not for most people, but you know, some people, when that develops too soon, that is still likely to be attraction. And it's sort of, you know, really deep love, I think, it's something that develops more and more over time. And I think a formula initially is a certain level of attraction plus time plus getting to know each other is what leads to deep love. It's not like huge chemistry initially, like necessarily on that first meeting.
No, absolutely. And something that we've also talked about in previous podcasts is, of course, that kind of knowing whether you've got the right person in front of you also depends on how well you know yourself. Yeah. So do you know what you're looking for? Do you know your vulnerabilities? Do you know whether you get very anxious, for example, in these kind of scenarios, and whether you need a lot of reassurance from the other person, and maybe you get a little bit overbearing sometimes in this kind of scenario, the dating scenario, by kind of constantly chasing the other person and checking that they're interested in you. So there's a lot. The starting point is always yourself. The more you're aware of yourself, your trigger points, your desires, your what you actually need in order to feel well, the more likely, of course, you are in choosing, knowing what you're actually looking for and choosing the right partner for you.
Absolutely, and that leads also back into an earlier podcast we did on attachment styles as well, in terms of what makes you feel good. If you need somebody there to kind of reassure you, or whether when somebody gets too close you feel that you want to withdraw. Again, these are important things to realise. And I think, with this thing as well is, if you think, well, no, having that deep attraction, deep chemistry on the first couple of dates, or for many people it is that first date, that first meeting, even before you really say much. Yeah. If you think, no, that really is important, that's the only way that I know that this is the right person, just think back into your past and think, well, has this worked in the past for creating that really deep, loving relationship? Yeah. Because if you're still looking for it, then it probably hasn't. Absolutely. So it might be that we need to think, well, actually, maybe this itself is problematic. Maybe this need for this deep sort of feeling, that instant sort of attraction, that love at first sight, which are all kind of fed through Hollywood movies. Yeah. I mean, it's the challenge is, right from being kids where we see these films and sort of, that instant connection, that instant deep love. And so we're kind of, a lot of people do look for this because we've been kind of educated into that's where you find that ideal relationship.
And in a way, that's a very avoidant attachment style, because that means that you're constantly ideal. You're looking for an ideal. You're looking for this ideal person. Call it, your soulmate, the right one, etc., etc. The person who can kind of give you everything that you've always wanted in life. And maybe also the person who can kind of the person who heals all the old wounds that you have from the past, who offers you the possibility to get it all right in the end. If you have that kind of desire, that might well be an indication that you are quite avoidant in your attachment. And ultimately, because you're always looking for the ideal, you're never going to get there, because there is no ideal person out there. An ideal is just that. It's not something that's real, yeah? So that's something that needs to be reflected on as well. And also remembering that when you are in this dating world, particularly sort of the online dating world, there are lots and lots of people who have an avoidant attachment style. The pool is much larger of those people who have an attachment style, and that's why an avoidant attachment style. That's why you constantly see the same photos pop up on these dating sites. Yeah, you might have noticed that. It's the same guys, it's the same women who pop up all the time, who've been there probably for years, some of them, because they struggle to really commit to a long-term relationship. So that might be a little bit of a warning sign as well. And I'm not saying that it is, yeah, because I wouldn't say that that's the only indication, but sort of, ask yourself what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of, it's just being really clear about, in terms of when we get to know somebody, the things that are really going to lead to a fulfilling relationship aren't those initial attractions in terms of physical attractions, although those can be important as well. But it's just in terms of some of those deeper values. And if you're listening to this and you're in a relationship, again, this is sort of those things where we may end up in a relationship where after some time we realise we don't have similar values, we don't have a similar outlook in life. So some of these things are much more important in terms of a fulfilling relationship. Like, do you think people should be kind? Do you think people should be caring? Do you think people should be sincere, honest? Do you think that, monogamy is important in a relationship? So these are things that later on can be really challenging if you don't have agreement in them, and we don't necessarily know at the beginning. But the sort of our values, these are the things that can cause real conflicts later on, but they're often things we don't explore sooner in relationships. And it's a question, well, a lot of the things that when we meet somebody, we might think we have that connection. And a lot of that initial connection, what we might call rapport, is some sense of similarity, is that we tend to like those people most like us, although we get attracted to people that seem very different from us too. And they might reflect that sort of shadow self sometimes, that bit that we kind of, we kind of hide within ourselves. But there is still some sort of elements of similarity that we tend to get attracted to. And I think, one of the challenges with that is that, sometimes those are superficial similarities, and it's looking at the deeper things like values and exploring those which are most important. And we have to have some commonality. At the same time, there's someone once said to me about how if you want a simple life, an easy life, find somebody who's most like you. But if you want to have a rich and kind of developing life, find somebody who's in some ways unlike you as well, although there has to be a similar level in terms of really fundamentally what your outlook is on life. But you work through those differences, and through working through those differences and getting to know each other, you can actually develop a really powerful connection. Because it's that, we talked about this in other podcasts, where it's working through conflict, working through those sort of things that maybe we on the surface seems different, but actually exploring it to a deeper level, so we really get to know that person more deeply.
Yeah, these are the sort of skills that actually make a relationship last in the long run, whether you can sail through the more challenging times in your life, whether you can address conflict, disagreements, whether you can sort that out with each other. That's really what matters in the end. It matters way more whether whether you can do that rather than liking the same music or having the same movies on your 100 best movie lists. So these are the sort of things that really in the end are important. But what we often focus on is exactly the kind of the little stuff, right? They like the same song, so we must be soulmates or something like that. Whereas actually in the beginning, of course, you always look for those similarities. That's the thing that makes you think, this person is really the right person for me, because they like the same music, they like the same films. It's something to hang on to, isn't it? To grasp onto, because we seek that. We seek this idea of, we're connected because we like the same thing. But in the end, I think these are not the sort of things that actually matter. It's more about find out more, ask some questions about how this person who you're dating or you're in the early stages of a relationship with, how they kind of work through conflict, for example. How do they manage that? Or how do they manage their emotions? How do they manage challenges in life? That, in the end, I think is way more important. That gives you more of an indication of who you've got in front of you.
Yeah, and the question is, how do you do that too early on? Because you don't want to go into your first date and start an argument just to see how they deal with it.
Sure.
But I think what one of the keys is as well is that in those early stages of dating. And we get, if you're in a relationship already, again, it's, maybe you're already kind of at that level where you're having disagreements, and then how do you work through that? And, very frequently you can, but you need to have the strategies. But in those early sort of stages of dating, it's finding a few people, and it is recommended not too many, because if you start dating too many people, you make too many selections, it becomes overwhelming. Yeah. And not only that, but actually, say you have 50 people you're kind of in touch with, well, it's like there's that constant need almost for comparison. It makes your mind think, well, could there be someone better in that list? Could there be someone X, Y, or Z? And the thing is, you could always think that. Yeah. Really, it's better to choose maybe sort of 5, 6, or 7 people that you kind of think, these people are people that kind of have some sort of common interest, some attraction with, and spend a bit of time getting to know them a little bit before you commit to like one relationship, before you get too deeply involved with one person. So you can start to think, actually, which person do I kind of feel most at ease, most comfortable with? Which person do I think would be the best person to be in a long-term relationship with?
Yes, and there were two thoughts now, they're just gone. Hang on, one thought I just came back to on that note is also, it might be helpful actually to not immediately start a sexual relationship. I wonder sometimes whether that kind of gets in the way as well. But to actually, before you kind of get into the throes of, of sex, where, you have a whole other experience on a physiological level, and you get carried away because it's so wonderful. Or maybe sometimes it's not so wonderful, but often it is. It might cloud your judgment a little bit as well, or it might create this false sense of connection with the other person or intimacy when it's actually not quite there yet. So I would wait a little bit with that and really kind of get to know the other person as best as you can before you initiate sex. And I mean, it's not a moral judgment, because you can do what you want, of course, but in that regard, it's more about being open to, sort of keeping your eyes open, so to speak, and not getting to, what's the word that I'm looking for, to sort of cloud it, as I say, in your judgment.
Yeah, because as soon as you get physically involved with someone, you get this oxytocin and other kind of hormones that go through the body, which they do affect your judgment. So it does kind of focus on thinking like, it's like those rose-coloured lenses kind of totally overwhelm your eyes, so you only see the great things about them. So so just, getting to know people for a little bit of time, 5 or 6 people, then starting to think, this is somebody that, I could really see that could have a good relationship with.
And sometimes it might also be quite helpful to sort of step away from it a little bit and imagine that your best friend was going out with this other person. What would you recommend? What would be your advice if you kind of watched it, if you had that kind of helicopter perspective and you looked at it from the outside in? Would you advise your friend to stay with this person or not? So that kind of removes you a little bit from the situation and gives you slightly different vantage point. So that might be something to consider.
Yeah, I was just laughing because I was thinking, well, if I picture my friend this person, I'm thinking like, hey, get away from my dates.
Yes. I know, but you know what I mean. Yeah, in terms of having a sort of slightly more objective perspective. And ultimately, also what I wanted to say, my thought just came back from earlier, is that in the end, of course, there isn't a sort of an absolute person out there. There isn't a sort of the one person out there. In the end, it's what you make them. It's what you create. It's what you want to create. It's up to you to shape this relationship. You feed into that, both of you actually, the other person, of course, as well. But if you really want this to be a successful and positive relationship, well, then that's what you create. That's what you work at, right?
Yeah, and ultimately they can become the absolute person in a way. So it's that kind of paradox that it's not that there is one person, but there are maybe various people out there who can become that one person, and you can have that really deep, fulfilling relationship with loving, fulfilling, and also a relationship you can grow together in, because that's important too. Is the last thing most people want is a stagnant relationship. It's a relationship where there is growth, where there's development together and individually as well.
Yeah, and actually also on that note, even if there is conflict in the relationship, that's entirely normal. So if you get into a bit of a disagreement early on, don't think, oh, this is, there must be something wrong here because this is not harmonious or something like that. You might have a disagreement about something, but again, it's about having the tools to work through that, to kind of acknowledge that the other person's got a different perspective. That does not mean that they might not be the right person for you. So, I mean, the warning signs for me, I think, would always be if you feel that the other person is treating you badly, if they really have a very negative effect on you in terms of your confidence, if they're undermining, if they're very critical, that's something where I would really listen out to and think, well, actually, is this worth pursuing? Would I really want to spend my time here with this person? They don't seem to have a very positive effect on me.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really important. Look at those warning signs, and again, if somebody's over the top in their kind of flattery as well, it's not may not be a bad thing, but it it can also be a little warning sign as well.
Absolutely, yeah. That's might be dealing with a narcissist there. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it's challenging. And I think that above all, is taking this away and thinking, is your current dating strategy is like in terms of the people you start to go out with? Has it been working for you? If you've been kind of going out with just people you find really, really attractive and there has to be that huge spark, if it hasn't been working for you, it might be rethinking, well, actually, maybe I need to try some of these other things that we've been talking about out. Because, that's the way that might lead into something that's different. So it's like, the saying is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. So it's about finding different kind of ways of going about things. Maybe kind of giving somebody a little bit of a chance where there is some attraction and you're not sure, but maybe actually if you're getting to know them a bit more first, you find actually you build an even deeper connection than you would have in the past with other people.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, great. So
okay, let's leave it here. I think there's more advice, but we can do another podcast on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for tuning in today. If you want more kind of notes about this podcast, head over to therelationshipmazepodcast.com. And if you want to find out more about developing your relationships, head over to therelationshipmaze.com. And please tune in to our next episode, and we look forward to speaking with you then.
Take good care and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.